to summarize all this, I think what I've tried to show here is that the recat structure is a very interesting thing, worthy of study in its own right, but I would not conclude that that was Atlantis. For one thing, being 1,500 feet above sea level, when Plato clearly describes Atlantis subsiding and being submerged beneath the Atlantic Ocean. I don't know how you would square something, and there's no evidence that I'm aware of that this was under the ocean until you go back, way back, when the deposition of those limestones occurred, which obviously was not within any time frame that would be consistent with Atlantis. However, it does appear that there were extreme floods and fluvial erosion over the plateau that would have been ultimately responsible for exposing the core of this unique structure that would have been buried beneath many hundreds of feet, maybe thousands of feet of bedrock at one time. So I'm going with the natural explanation that it's a domal uplift, shear off the top, that exposes the rings, that it's based on a magma plume, possibly the idea that there could be an impact event somewhere in its genesis, although the opinions that have pretty much emerged in the recent studies of this, which include geophysical surveys and on-site sampling and things like that, using Raman spectroscopy and various sophisticated technologies to identify the minerals and the composition of the basalts and so on, that, yeah, it clearly is a natural feature, a magnificent natural feature that was occupied by various groups of people. And if there was a civilization during the Ice Age that could have visited it and could have been a source of inspiration. But I've thought for a long time that many of the circular structures that were impacts might have served as inspiration. And the number of large circles that we find in this obsession with circles in so many ancient cultures. Look at Avebury, and then look at Newark, right? And what we just looked at, the Portsmouth with these multiple ringed structures. So somewhere that idea implanted itself in the human brain. So hopefully we've covered enough now that I think we can, I don't know how somebody is going to now come back and make the argument that this was in fact the literal Atlantis, right? Because it's just too many details inconsistent with Plato's account. And Plato's
I think you answered the question. The question that a lot of viewers had was they want to hear what you think about it, and that's what you have just done. So
yeah,
I don't think there's going to be a lot of fighting about this. I mean, there might be one or two guys, but
there's going to be an all-out brawl.
Well, okay, so then somebody basically has to make a counterfactual argument.
No, it wouldn't matter which side you take. There's going to be a brawl.
That's right. Yeah, we'll let it happen. Just let the fight happen in the comments now, right? We just can watch. It'll be great.
But yeah, I mean, like you said, they got to bring the evidence.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've got two sides. You've got Plato's detailed account, which is very specific, right? That's one thing, right? Which right at the outset of this, we're trying to say, well, let's be consistent with Plato's account. Let's not start changing the details around, but let's just see what happens if we take what he says at face value. His geography, his geology, his astronomy, his chronology. If we just look at those things, take it at face value, let's see if, what we come up with. And what we come up with is a model that's pretty damn consistent with his scenario. And I tried to show, and we certainly didn't cover all of the science. There was all kinds of the science, the marine geology and the oceanography and stuff we didn't get into. We got into enough to show that this idea that subsidence of the ocean bottom is not woo, it's not inconsistent. It could have been very substantial, could have been several thousand feet, right? We've shown that there was major catastrophic events that occurred in the Atlantic Ocean whose timing was consistent with Plato's chronology. Right? So you've got Plato's highly detailed account, which the question I ask over and over again is how much can you deviate from that and still be talking about Atlantis, right? Now we turn to the recat structure, and basically what we're seeing is that we've got half a century or more of studies going back, all of which the controversies are surrounding the idea of how it was formed, but nobody disputes the fact that it was other than a natural phenomenon.
Natural phenomenon, yeah.
Yeah, and you can't, I mean, when you're talking about gabbroic dikes that feed down into a demonstrable magma chamber, I mean, clearly that is a natural feature.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's a geologic feature. It is not human made.
Perfect.
Next episode, Antarctic Atlantis.
Oh, I was going to say, let's
No.
do the moon and prove that the Atlanteans came from the moon.
Well, when you said Antarctica, now, I know that there's been a couple of books or a book written purportedly claiming or making the case that Atlantis was in Antarctica. I have no doubt that Antarctica has yielded up all kinds of interesting secrets and mysteries and information
Yes.
that we're going to learn. And nor would I rule out the possibility that there were times when there was major deglaciation episodes of Antarctica and it could have been colonized by people. I'm not going to rule that out.
Right.
However, again, I have a very difficult time stretching Plato's detailed accounts to make Atlantis, put it in Antarctica.
Right.
Especially when you can see what we've covered over these last 4 or 5 episodes here.
Yeah.
You've got to confront. You've got to address that information. You've got to address the information that there is empirical evidence of major subsidence along the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. You've got to address the evidence that the Azores Plateau could have been a substantial island during the Ice Age. So, I mean, if you're not addressing that, then I don't know. Don't waste my time anymore. But
yeah, basically, like all of that shows that there's no need to try to find Atlantis somewhere else.
Exactly.
Right. Maybe that doesn't mean we don't want to go look at these other places.
Of course not. I mean, all of these places are extremely interesting,
right,
and valuable.
Whatever. If there is an advanced, very ancient lost civilization in Antarctica, it just isn't Atlantis. It's just an ancient lost civilization that's in Antarctica.
Yeah,
they all stray from Plato in one or many ways.
Right. That's right.
Now,
It's not acceptable.
Plato does describe, outlier colonies. I mean, he talks about Atlanteans coming all the way in, to the inner Mediterranean. Again, all this is hypothetical, but in staying conservative in terms of our hypothesizing, if you had a maritime culture in the mid-Atlantic, there's no reason why it also couldn't have colonized the United States, South America, the British Isles. I mean, if they were in the kind of culture that they would create. I mean, like what Plato's describing, triremes is going to be wooden ships, wooden sailing ships, right? Well, I mean, what's going to exist of that ever after 11, 12, 13,000 years? And then given the nature of the terminal ice age catastrophes that swept over huge regions of the Earth's surface, I mean, we wouldn't expect to find much of such a culture. I mean, if the Phoenician culture had existed 13, 14,000 years ago, what would we expect to find of it now? Probably not much. Right. And as far as the ringed city structure that we were just looking at, now that would be the thing. If we found that submerged, I mean, that would be pretty convincing evidence. But I don't know. I mean, whether that was real or whether
down on one of those flat top, submerged islands that they found the beach sand on.
Yeah, somewhere like that. Yeah,
dive down there.
And that's where we would be looking. And I think that there remains to be seen some pretty interesting discoveries along the Azores Plateau and the Mid-Atlantic Ridge and sunken islands generally in the Atlantic Ocean. And in fact, I mean, sometimes the clue is right in your face. I mean, the Atlantic Ocean, where does it get its name?
Right.
It's named after Atlantis. Whoever, way back whenever, named the Atlantic Ocean, they had Atlantis in mind. Right. I saw somebody commenting saying, well, no, nobody believed that, Atlantis was, everybody believed that Plato just meant it as a metaphor, which of course is not true at all. I mean, if you go back and you look at the commentary, you realize that it was pretty much split down the middle. the pre-Socratics all believed in a literal Atlantis. The Aristotelians thought that Plato meant it as a metaphor, but the pre-Socratics and a lot of and then into the Pythagoreans, they all believed it was literal, that it actually existed, and so did the Arabs. There's enough vague references to suggest that there was evidence that the Arabs inherited a lot of that tradition of Atlantis.
Oh, cool.
Now, there's a lot more that we could be talking about, but if people want to get that, they're going to have to buy the book. So
That's right.
Perfect.
Yep, print that slideshow, put it on Amazon.
That's right.
Well, we probably didn't even look at half of the total number of slides.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but it was enough, I think, to lay out the rudiments of the case that I'm trying to make here.
I think so.
Yeah.